What about modern day Israel, Palestine? Well, you know, I tried really hard to get some real serious numbers out of the Mossad and the FBI, who, needless to say, wrote me not very kind letters telling me to mind my own business. So I went over there and I talked to B'Tselem, a great human rights organization everyone should know about. It's Israeli. They're the ones that brought the Israeli Supreme Court to issue a sentence saying, no, you really can't torture. I don't care if there's a ticking bomb out there, you can't do it. That was a reversal of their earlier position. Worked with B'Tselem, found a bunch of field workers for human rights that were Palestinian, and we started doing some interviews of the surviving family members of different suicide bombers between the first and second Intifada. After the first Intifada, all those harsh security measures started going into place. Did suicide bombings go down or go up? Well, they tripled. And that was several years ago. So my next question was there trauma in the background of any of these suicide bombers? And again, was told to mind my own business. I had 3 different field workers that were going to interview a series of families. The person in Gaza couldn't get out of his house because there was a security crisis and no one could go anywhere. The people in the Jenin area, Bethlehem area, and that surrounding area where there had been very harsh crackdowns. And by the way, all of the suicide bombers were from the places with the highest and most severe of the security measures. All of the family members were able to give just enough information that we could do a little sketch for each suicide bomber. And the trauma in each case was horrifying. It was heartbreaking. You know, the woman suicide bomber, who had been a member of the equivalent of the Red Cross, the Red Crescent, had recently carried her friend to an ambulance while his brains leaked out into her hands. You know, there were others who had seen their parents shot to death in front of their homes, or whose older brothers came home near vegetables after years in Israeli prison. And as a direct descendant of the Holocaust, this was really hard for me to hear, but we have to hear it and we have to learn from it. Of course it makes violence go up. As one prisoner who was released from Abu Ghraib, who had first been tortured under Saddam Hussein and then tortured under the Americans in Abu Ghraib a second time, and during that second torture session had admitted that in fact he was Osama bin Laden in disguise, anything to get the heck out of there. He was asked by a Washington Post reporter, so are you going to run off now and join the suicide bombers and the resistance? And he said, well, what would you do if someone came to your country and invaded you and broke all of your laws and tortured you? Would you resist? And with that he just walked off. And when we hear about the prisoners in Guantanamo who are finally released, and for some strange reason we find them with the Taliban later, I think it's a fair question. Didn't we do that? Didn't we cause that? And I think if we look at all of those areas of resistance historically, of course the violence and the resistance climbs dramatically. Of course it does. And I think when we turn the question around and ask what we would do in that context, of course we would fight back. All right, let's deal with the ticking bomb. The whole justification that we need torture because someday there might be a nuclear weapon about to go off under Grand Central Station. Well, number one, it hasn't happened, and we've tortured thousands and thousands of people. We've committed systemic war crimes. And there hasn't been any huge nuclear bomb under Grand Central Station. That's exactly the situation that caused the Israeli Supreme Court to come out and say, we used to say that if there's an imminent attack, that it's okay to use physical force but not torture. But now we're seeing from this B'Tselem report that we're massively torturing all prisoners. So from now on, none. None. And the exact quote was, it may be that a democracy must fight with one hand tied behind its back, but at least that is the upper hand. Perhaps we should listen. All right. So it's a slippery slope, highly dangerous. We fell right down that slope. But what if there was a nuclear weapon about to go off under Grand Central Station? Well, the same basic covert operations manual that's used by the CIA and trained to all of its members is used by all these other underground groups also, which shows us why that will never work. For example, there's a group of people that planted the bomb, we assume. The CIA grabs someone. Hypothetical number one, it's the wrong person because of disinformation, human error, whatever. That person is tortured. People will say anything under torture, like the guy that said, I'm Osama bin Laden in disguise, please don't hurt me anymore. You get the wrong information, you go zooming off to the wrong location, boom, the bomb goes off somewhere else. Didn't work. Number two, you get a person in the group, but not the person who planted the bomb. All clandestine operations practice what's called compartmentalization. You only know something if you're the person doing it, because someone could get picked up and tortured. You pick up the person, maybe he knew there was going to be a bomb planted somewhere, but he doesn't know where it is. He's not supposed to, and he doesn't. You torture that person, he'll name some place to make you stop hurting him. You'll go to the wrong location, the bomb will still go off. Hypothetical number three, you capture the person who did place the bomb. Well, if he's that high up, or she, then at that point, there will be many people who are supposed to know where that person is at all times, and they will have noticed that he or she has been captured. At that point, the bomb is moved. Also, that person will have been very, very carefully trained to endure 24 hours of torture by giving disinformation. There will be a story that that person will give under torture so that there is time to move the bomb and get everyone else out of New York City that was implicated. When Senator McCain was tortured, he gave a list of, I think, the Green Bay Packers, right, when he was asked for the names of the people in his platoon. That's standard operating procedure. So you torture the person that really placed the bomb. Number one, he won't give you the correct information. Everardo took 3 years of torture. Not one safe house went down. They had no idea I existed. That's 3 years we're talking about. They did go chasing off to random parts of the volcanoes in Guatemala and find a lot of rusty rifles that weren't usable anymore. And they were, according to the CIA reports, quite annoyed about that after a while. And when they insisted on being led up into the volcanoes to take out the clandestine radio, he led them into an ambush. That's probably why, in the end, he ended up dead. He wasn't giving information. So we catch the person that really laid the bomb. He gives disinformation for 24 hours, the bomb is moved. Or he tells the correct version, but by then the bomb is moved. It's still too late, the bomb still goes off. So what's the moral of the story? Don't wait until 3 hours before a nuclear weapon's going to go off under Grand Central Station, right? The next time the White House gets a memo saying Al-Qaeda determined to attack within the United States, or the memo from the Philippines, these people we just caught are planning to fly big airplanes into tall buildings, or the FBI agents that tried and tried and tried to get attention for this person they believed to be an Al-Qaeda member, Massawi, that wanted to learn to fly an airplane in a straight line but didn't care about learning to take off or land. He wasn't interested. We had all that information. We didn't use it. We have tons and tons of ways to gather evidence and information. Our intelligence is skewed by our own politics, so we can't read it correctly. The first few documents in Everardo's statements are that the guns, of course, are coming in on boats from Cuba. There was a garage sale going on in Nicaragua and Salvador. Why would they take boats and try to get through the Coast Guard? And you could also look at the weapons they were carrying. It was pretty obvious they were mostly captured from the police and the Guatemalan army in short ambushes. It wasn't hard to figure it out. But the CIA wanted that story. Everardo knew that's the story they wanted, so that's what they gave, and he gave, and they were very happy with that for a long time. Our information is skewed. Our whole intelligence system is skewed by the lens of this politics that we're living in, that they're living in. I mean, somehow it was still a Soviet or Cuban invasion of Guatemala, but if you were up in the volcanoes with the combatants, they were speaking Cachiquel and Canjobal. Nobody looked like they came from anywhere near Cuba or the Soviet Union. How did we get so far off base? So I think, number one, we have to reshape our whole way of interpreting intelligence. But number two, common sense. We have to respect the rest of the world. We can't be terrorizing other nations and bending them to our culture and our monetary needs and our resource needs. We have to share and we have to live together. And it's the only way we're going to all come through with this. I think Gandhi said it best, right? Oh, no, I'm sorry. I've got my quotes mixed up here. But I think that if we can't learn to cohabitate in the best, most fraternal sense of that word, that we won't survive as the human race. We can't. So anyway, I'll leave you with that, and thank you very much.